Josh Green here for Tungsten Tales. Delighted to be joined by Linda Duffy, former England darts captain and a chartered member of the British Psychological Society. Linda, how are you doing this morning?
I'm all right, Josh. Fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. Mental health is a big sort of broad subject, but it's certainly coming more to the fore in darts now with the amount of young players, particularly in the PDC, the amount of tournaments on offer, the amount of prize money on offer. Does it feel like it's becoming a much bigger issue that needs to be looked at more broadly in darts?
I think definitely, Josh. Yes. As you say, quite rightly say, the players are younger. They're probably, less able to cope with the strain and the pressure of being, of trying to become a top dart player. And some young people are obviously top dart players. Years ago, players were older, had more life experience, were more able to cope with the pressures, maybe had some more stability behind them, already had their family, had a house, that type of thing. But now we can see, if we're going back a few years, we can look at young players coming through. I mean, back in my day, Eric Bristow was young for a dart player. Then we had sort of Michael van Gerwen came through, who was young. A lot of the players that he was playing against were, maybe 10, 15 years older than him. And now we've just seen a massive influx of young players coming through because of, the development tour, youth tours, the JDC, those sorts of things. So I think with the more young players that are coming through, this is going to be much more of an issue.
Do you think things like that can feed into what we're seeing now, players suffering with dartitis and things like that? And yeah, what they're suffering from mentally, maybe away from the board, can really affect their performances on the oche and in those tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dartitis is just one sort of manifestation of an anxiety disorder, really, is what it is. It's a competitive anxiety disorder that shows itself in the players not being able to throw their darts, something that they're well trained in doing and have been able to do really, really well to an elite level, and then suddenly they can't do it. So it's just one manifestation of an anxiety disorder, but there are others as well. I mean, if you look at burnout, burnout is like a physical and mental state of exhaustion, and it's experienced by people that just are doing, too much intense training, too much intense competition, and then suddenly your brain and your body just says, I can't do this anymore, not for the time being. And, burnout is another form of anxiety. And stress and an emotional, sort of just lack of emotion, if you like, of being able to play. We've seen that with lots of players. I mean, Nathan Aspinall is a fairly recent one, Barry Van Peer. And then, without actually developing dartitis, we've seen Luke Humphries, who's recently come out and said that he just needs a break. And people sort of don't understand that, but I can understand it fully because they play all the time, and when they're not playing, in the public eye, in the Players' Championships, in the Premier League, they're practicing. They don't maintain their performance, that level of performance, without practicing all the time.
Yeah, I was going to mention those Luke Humphries comments from a couple of weeks ago. He's obviously mentioned many years ago now that he was suffering from anxiety when he was playing darts. But you look at the schedule that a former world champion, the world number one, has to maintain, jumping from a traveling on the Wednesday to a Thursday Premier League, possibly to European Tour Saturday, Sunday, back to Pro Tours Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's very much rinse and repeat. I know he's got young children, he's got a family. There's not time for that really. Like darts has become something that I would assume has taken over his life.
Mm. Well, yeah, absolutely. Um, all the players, if you look at the Premier League players, if you look at their schedule from sort of end of February, beginning of mid-February, I think the Players' Championship
Yeah,
start end of February, going through to the finals at the O2 in what, mid-May.
late May. Yeah,
Yeah, late May. It's brutal. That's 4 months of, they're just playing darts, competitive darts as well, all the time. They have Euro tours, Players' Championships, Premier League, and then all the travelling that goes with that, it's too much. If you have a player that plays in the Premier League, I think after the Premier League, depending on their position in the various rankings, after the Premier League, I would say to them, take a month off, don't play in anything because you need it. You've traveled so much, practiced so much, and it's what's on your mind all the time. It's not just the practicing and the playing and the traveling. It's all the time you're thinking about your next tournament, which is a big one and an important one. It's not one that you can say, well, I'm going to go and, hopefully not maybe prepare as well as I should. Every tournament they play in for that 4 or 5 months is one that they have to prepare for and they need to do well in. It's just too much on their mental health.
We're seeing an introduction of more tournaments as well. I was looking earlier, and there's 7 World Series events now, plus the World Series of Darts finals. Obviously, 17 Premier League nights, 13 European tours, 34 Players Championships. That's an awful lot of darts, and you've got to say it's probably not likely to go down. If anything, it's likely to be more tournaments as we progress over the years. Do you think?
Well, I think the PDC obviously make a lot of money out of the tournaments, so they want to put tournaments. So they'd have tournaments on every day of the week if they could. But they are going to have to. Players are going to have to be more choosy on which tournaments they play in. Obviously, if you get picked for the Premier League, then you have to play in that. Well, you don't have to, but you're going to play in that. So yeah, and then you're gonna need to do well in players' championships to make sure you stay up in the top 16 so you get through into the Euros, invited into the Euros. So there are tournaments that you will have to play in. But I would be very choosy on which ones, ones that I didn't. I would clear my calendar, and look and see which ones do I absolutely have to be in, and which ones don't I. And then I'd take breaks to be with the family, take breaks to go on holiday. Michael Van Gerwen, I think, does the right thing most of January. I think he misses the Masters normally, and most of January he goes away to a really nice, exotic, quiet place with his wife and kids, and just really, recharges his batteries. And that's what you need to do. And I would say more than once a year as well.
Yeah. How different is the conversation around Luke Littler, who's got a huge amount of media pressure, probably even more than any other player we've seen in darts over the last 20, 30 years. He's 18 years of age, only just 18 years of age, and he's got this huge spotlight and pressure on him. Is it maybe a slightly different conversation
I,
around
I
Luke?
I think he's had more pressure than any dart player that's ever lived, actually, to be honest. He burst onto the scene. Most people around darts knew about Luke, but he burst onto the sort of public scene, obviously, not last year, but the year before in the World Championship, just 17. He's played in so many tournaments, he's done exceptionally well. He will sort of ride the crest of the wave, I think, for a while, but there will come a time where he'll hit a brick wall. He has to, because you can't keep up that mental pressure, week on week on week. But I think he's starting now to realise he's got a good manager, and I think his manager is starting to realise, that he needs to build in breaks for Luke so that he can just have some time off. He's not gonna. Another thing with dart players is that people expect them to perform 100 averages every time they get up on the stage. And when they don't, when they drop down to like 90 something, they go, oh, well, they're off form or they're not so good. And it's ridiculous. You wouldn't expect Usain Bolt to run 9.5 seconds every time he ran, would you? So that's what they're expecting dart players to do, to maintain a ridiculous level of performance every time they play. And it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I guess with Luke as well, turning 18, there's so many other things that will be entering his life. Do you think when you talk about hitting a wall and possibly that form and that crest of the wave not lasting forever, is that something that you think will be difficult to deal with for Luke when he does finally hit that wall?
Who knows, to be honest. I mean, he will need probably help when he gets to that stage. It depends what he's done in darts. I mean, if he carries on the way he's carrying on and he plays for 5 years, he may never need to play again if he doesn't want to,
Yeah.
because he'll be set himself up for life. he's earned a lot of money already. I don't probably was well over 1 million, probably, 1.5 million or something like that on the prize. I mean, if he carries on like that for the next 5 years, and he doesn't feel too much, tension and pressure, he could really reevaluate his life, and then, maybe probably doesn't want to retire because I think he loves the game, but he could really pick and choose where, he plays. So it depends. I mean, when you look at these players like Luke, the two Lukes, Humphries and Littler, it depends what they want out of the game. If they want longevity and they want to be playing into their sort of, late 40s, 50s maybe, then they have to look at it a different way. They have to pace themselves. So they would need to be very picky and choosy about when they play, which tournaments they play, building in breaks into their schedule, because that will give them longevity. It will give their mind a rest, which is what they need more than their bodies, is they need to rest their minds, so, and take their mind away from the competitive arena. But if they're looking at it from the other angle, where okay, they're number one and two in the world now, I think,
Mhm.
they can earn a lot of money going forward. They may be thinking, okay, I'm really going to, tear this up for the next 5 years, and then I'm going to stop playing. And Luke Littler will only be in his mid 20s. Luke Humphries will only be, I think he's 30 or 31 now. He'll only be in his mid 30s, and they would have earned enough money to set themselves up financially and to go and do something else. So it depends which way they look at it. If they want longevity, they're going to have to be very careful.
Yeah. It's a different conversation around players lower down in the rankings. I know you formerly managed Josh Payne, but
Mm.
players outside probably the top 64, it's not quite yet at a level, even with the increase in prize money, where every player outside the top 64 is a professional darts player. They've still got things like work, they've got a lot of other things in their life apart from darts. Is there an aspect of where mental health has to be looked at on the darts side, but they've obviously got everything else in their life as well?
Well, they come from a different angle, don't they? Because they're not relying solely on darts for their income.
Mm.
And if you do rely solely on darts for your income, then there's extra pressure for you to perform well, because you'll have sponsors, you'll have management team that are pushing you to play in everything probably.
Yeah,
You'll have, the PDC, you want the PDC to pick you for things. So there's a different aspect to it altogether. If you're outside the top six, or even if you're in the top 64 and you're working as well, then you don't have the financial pressure, just to get your income from darts. Darts could be viewed as somewhat as a sort of bonus money, if you like. Also, because you're, around, outside the top 32 even, or outside the top 16 even, you're not going to get invited to everything, are you?
yeah,
You're not going to be in the Premier League, obviously. You're not going to be automatically in the Euros, which I think they still are, the top 16 on the Pro Tour. I
yeah,
think are still automatically in the Euros. You're not going to be automatically in the majors. So your darts calendar is going to be a lot less hectic than people that are in the top 16 or higher up the rankings.
yeah,
And of course, you're going to have other income to rely on. So, you're not going to be worried about, looking after your family if that's your role, to just rely on money from darts. You're going to be getting it from other sources. So maybe there's not so much pressure. There'll be more pressure. It's the same pressure to practice and to improve your game. You're going to have to do that around your job, which a lot of people do, and they do it quite well. I mean, Johnny Clayton, I think, because I don't know if he still works, but he worked for a long time. Up and he was, I think he'd won majors and he was still working. So, yeah, I'd go in Price. I think still likes to work. I know he's got his own businesses, but he likes to work and do things outside of darts. I think that helps. So you're not, the pressure isn't darts all the time.
yeah. We've talked a lot about sort of burnout, and we've talked about different coping mechanisms as well. What would you like to see implemented, and what do you think can be done by the PDC, obviously, and people like the PDPA as well?
I think there should be a referral. It's like any other business. There should be a referral process in place whereby someone like if we use Luke Humphries, because he's been open about it and he's come out and said it, so I'm sure he don't mind us talking about it. If we use someone like Luke, I think he should be he should have been, as soon as he was feeling that the pressure or the stress was getting a bit too much, or he was getting tired, or he was feeling a bit burnt out, I think there should be somewhere he could go to the PDPA and, and be referred to speak to someone before he has to come out and make it public. So I don't think that helps making it public. It's unfortunate because we're always talking now about, young men, men's mental health, how they should be allowed or feel comfortable discussing their mental health issues if they have any. Yep, so we want those channels to be open for young men, but when they do come out and say things and talk about their mental health, they unfortunately on social media platforms, they get lambasted for it, and it's not right. It's going to stop them speaking and airing their feelings. But with that said, not social media is not for everyone. Some people use it, some people don't. So, but regardless of social media, there should be a referral system in place by the PDC and the PDPA, whereby players can go and say how they're feeling, and maybe they could be referred to a psychologist, mental health practitioner, somebody professional who knows what they're talking about, not just an ex-player who, with all due respect to ex-players, they've got the lived experience, but they haven't got the the wherewithal to be able to talk to them, properly about mental health issues, and some of the causes of the mental health issues, the symptoms, and some of the interventions that can be used to help the players get back on track.
Yeah, well, I was going to end it there, but you sort of mentioned about social media, and that's obviously a relatively recent development. Spoke to players over the last year or so. So many players have referenced messages and abuse they've received over social media. Cameron Menzies, Luke Humphries has talked about it, Nathan Aspinall as well. What's the coping mechanism there? Is it simply not be on social media?
Yeah, just don't use it. I mean, really, I mean, the public can't have it always. They can't have sort of direct contact with all these, stars of darts or stars of any sports or any people, celebrities, if you like. They can't have that open contact with them. And if they abuse them, expect the celebrities to just, or the dart players just not to say anything or not do anything. I would just advise players not to be on social media. Maybe be on social media for just regular things like, oh, I felt good today the way I played, thanks for all the support. Just really generic stuff that doesn't really mean much anyway. But certainly not, social media isn't a place to air your feelings because, although the majority of people will be sympathetic, most people will just they'll see it as a weakness and they'll just pounce on it and find it as a way to batter a person down even further. So I would stay. You said that I managed Josh Payne for a long, long time, and he's openly admitted to having mental health issues. He had lots of things happen in his life that were really negative. Um, and he came off social media. He just deactivated his accounts and that was it. So that's what, and you don't need it really. I mean, the only problem when I say you don't need it, I'm not 100% correct there. Your sponsors and your management group will expect you to tweet things out or put stuff on Instagram to help them promote things. So like new products, for example, if you're with Harrows or Winmau, they have players, Red Dragon, I don't want to leave anyone out, Target, they all have players that they want them to promote their products. So they want them to have social media. They've got other sponsors as well outside of darts. They want them to have the players to have social media to promote their products and to promote events for the PDC. So it's a difficult one because social media platforms, obviously are here to stay, and they are, a big mechanism for advertising things. So it's not just as easy to say just delete your accounts. Not for the top players. Just be
Absolutely.
careful. Just be careful what you put on them.
Linda, really appreciate your time today.
Hey,
Thanks for
Josh.
speaking so openly and honestly about that. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch up a little bit down the line.
Okay, Josh. So thanks. Have a nice Easter.